It doesn't matter if you have $10,000 or $10 million. There is one thing that holds most people back from truly being financially independent. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through what that one thing is, and I'm going to show you how you can move through it. Hey everybody, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and I'm here to teach you how to get the most out of life with your money. Let's start by defining what financial independence actually is. Here's a definition. Financial independence is the status of having enough income or wealth sufficient to pay one's living expenses for the rest of one's life without having to be employed or dependent on others. The key there is having enough. Having enough is the definition of financial independence of I have what I need to live out the rest of my life and accomplish all my goals, and I'm not dependent on something else to do so. Well, simple enough, right? But how do we know what enough is? Well, most people, they make this mistake. They start their career, they start working, they start earning a bit and putting some money away, and instead of truly thinking through how much do I actually need to be on track for my goals, we use some arbitrary but round number. Maybe the first number is 500,000. Then it turns to $1 million. Then you hit $1 million and it turns to $2 million. Then you hit $2 million and it turns to 3. Then 3 turns to 5. And what we start to realize is what we think of as enough is really just a round arbitrary number. And once we hit it, we don't automatically feel more secure. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we feel more insecure or more anxious about, man, this is a bigger responsibility. If I just had $1 million more or $2 million more, that would start to alleviate my burdens. And then what we start to realize is we start playing this endless game, this exhausting game of trying to accumulate more, but never satisfying that feeling of enough. So when we start trying to determine this number, this feeling of enough, know this, it's not an arbitrary number. It's not $1 million or $3 million or $5 million. It's not what your neighbor has. It's not what your brother-in-law has. It should be a number, but it should be a number that's very specific and unique to you, and I'm going to show you how you can calculate it. And the reason this is so important is if we don't focus on this the right way, if we don't reframe the way we view our portfolio, you're going to be in this endless rat race and you're never going to get that financial security regardless of how many zeros you have in your bank account. So the first thing that you need to do when it comes to defining enough is you need to reframe the way you think about your portfolio. So often, our portfolio becomes the goal. Our portfolio becomes the thing. And our only goal is to grow the thing. The more this can grow, the larger this can get, our money problems will go away once this keeps growing until we start to realize that's not going to be the case. Instead of viewing your portfolio as the thing, think of it as the supporting thing, where the thing is you, your values, your goals. When you think about life, what's actually most important to you? Well, we probably say things like family and friendship and experience and travel and generosity, but when it actually comes down to it, we think of our portfolio as being the most important thing with our financial plan. Well, think of your portfolio as the thing that supports the things that are actually most important. So where you can actually start is just go through an exercise. What do you want life to look like in the future and today? What does it look like for you living comfortably and maintaining lifestyle? What does it look like for legacy? What does it look like to protect against health events or things that could go wrong? That's the foundational starting point for how you can determine enough. So knowing that our portfolios, they could always be bigger. There's no one that has a portfolio that couldn't be larger. Set that aside as the first step and think through what's actually most important. And we're gonna walk through an example to see this. But let's assume that what's financially important, financial independence, sending kids to college, buying another home in retirement, protecting against risks in the future, health risks or long-term care risks, maybe leaving a bit of a legacy. Let's imagine, or let's use an example where those are what you say is actually most important. How do we determine what's enough to accomplish that? Well, what we need to do is we need to segment each of these as unique goals, and we need to determine how much is actually needed to accomplish that. If we don't do this, what we do is we keep falling back into that trap of just growing a bigger and bigger number, but thankfully that's not what's needed. Instead, how do we determine how much is enough to maintain this lifestyle forever? How much is enough to provide the legacy I want to provide? How much is enough to protect against healthcare or long-term care needs? How much is enough to you fill in the blank? And let's walk through an exercise to show you that. Let's assume that you're 65 years old and you say, okay, James, I'm going through this exercise. The first thing that's important to me is financial independence. Okay, Well, financial independence, what does that truly mean? It means you have enough income coming in to maintain your lifestyle. What does lifestyle cost? Let's assume it's $70,000 to keep it simple. Okay, you need $70,000 of passive income coming in for you to feel financially free, financially independent. Well, let's assume you and a spouse are 65 and combined you have $40,000 coming in from Social Security. Okay, that $40,000 is going to cover part of that 70, but there's still $30,000 left to be created for you to have that full amount. Well, if we simply use the rule of 4%, see, I need $30,000 per year for my portfolio. That needs to represent 4% of the larger portfolio. So 30,000 divided by 4% equals $750,000. So if you have $750,000 with a 4% withdrawal rate generating $30,000 per year, that can supplement your Social Security and give you $70,000 per year. So right there, what we're starting to see is $750,000 is enough for you to maintain your lifestyle. Now, that's not your only goal. Maybe you also have a goal of leaving a legacy for your 2 children. And maybe the way that you look at legacies, you say, you know what, James, I'd love to leave $1 million for our kids, so $500,000 each, but we're planning on living another 30 years. Okay, then that doesn't mean that you need $1 million today to set aside. We need to work backwards. If $1 million is the goal 30 years from today, how much do we need to set aside today that will ultimately grow to that amount so we'll have the legacy we desire at that time in the future? Well, since we have 30 years to make this happen, we can invest in a fairly aggressive portfolio. Let's assume that we get 8% in that portfolio over the next 30 years. Well, if you do that, you only need to set aside $100,000 today that will grow to $1 million 30 years from now if you can get an 8% return. So now what we've done is we've determined what's enough for legacy. So we need $750,000 for lifestyle, financial independence, plus we need $100,000 for legacy. So now enough for the 2 of those combined is $850,000. Then the next piece you might be concerned about is protection. It's not enough just to know we're going to be okay. If I'm always worried about, oh my gosh, what happens if there's a health event? What happens if there's a long-term care event? I know I'm fine if that doesn't happen, but I don't want to tempt the odds. I don't want to tempt fate here. What happens if I do have a long-term care event? Well, let's work through that. Let's assume that you don't have a long-term care insurance policy, but you want to self-fund. Meaning you want to know there's enough money in a portfolio that could pay for potential long-term care costs. Let's assume starting 20 years from today. What we want to know is how much do you need to have extra in your portfolio today that's dedicated to those long-term care costs, assuming that it can grow for 20 years. Well, if you set as an extra amount aside, and if we assume that that grows by 8% per year over 20 years, you would need to set aside $107,000 to make that happen. Now, if you set aside an amount that grows at 6% per year instead, you would need to set aside $156,000 per year to make that happen. Both of those instances would give you $500,000 that you'd have free and clear to self-fund some of these long-term care needs. Now, because we can't predict exactly what the market's going to do over that time, let's err on the side of being more conservative. Let's assume you need $150,000 for that. So that would grow, or if that grew by just over 6% per year, it would give you $500,000 needed to cover long-term care costs. So now back up. We need $750,000 for our financial independence needs. We need another $100,000 for our long-term legacy needs. We need $150,000 to protect against what could go wrong, long-term care, health events, etc. If we add all those up, we need $750,000 plus $100,000 plus $150,000. That tells me you need $1 million to have enough. Because when we can start attaching dollars to their intended purpose, you get a lot more clarity with your finances. Instead of just thinking, okay, $1 million is enough or $2 million is enough, well, it could be or it could not be. Until we've gone through the exercise of understanding what dollars go to fund what goals or what expenses, you're not going to have that connection there. But what this exercise does is it connects your specific portfolio, your specific dollars, not just to some round arbitrary number, but to their intended purpose. Now, we just stopped here after financial independence, after legacy, after protection. Maybe there's other goals. Maybe it's children's college or grandchildren's college. Maybe it's a second home in retirement. Maybe it's extra travel for the first 10 to 15 years of retirement. You can get endless possibilities with this, but the goal for true financial independence, not just to have enough, but to feel enough is to know what dollars fund what goals. And the more clear you can get on those goals of what does retirement look like, what are we trying to fund, the more clear and the more specific you can get on how many dollars are needed to accomplish that. Now, quick side note here. This concept of enough means different things to different people. I know plenty of people, plenty of clients, plenty of friends who have enough, but they continue working, they continue saving, they continue investing. So I don't want this to mean that the only purpose for work or the only purpose for saving or investing is to fund some specific goal. If you love work, if you just love growing, keep going after this. I want to make this point though, because for some of us, if you don't love work or if you don't love saving or investing, it's more of just a means to an ends, then having this clear picture of what enough looks like for you will allow you to understand when have you hit that point and when can you start doing things that are more meaningful to you. But if you love work or if you just enjoy saving or investing or growing generational wealth or whatever your intended purpose is, it's not bad to keep going. You just need to be intentional and mindful about it. So what are the takeaways from this? And quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you get more videos just like this. Well, there's 3 key takeaways I want to leave you with. Number 1, financial independence truly is a number, but it's not an arbitrary number. It's not $1 million or $2 million or $5 million because you think in your head that's what's going to make you feel comfortable. If that's all you have, you will never feel peace, you'll never feel enough. It is a number, but this number should be uniquely tied to your specific goals. Number 2, do what's hard. Sometimes continuing to save and continuing to work, that's actually the most easy thing for most people. What's harder is understanding and getting clear about what does a meaningful, fun, enjoyable life look like. What would you do with family, with friends, with hobby, with volunteering? What does that meaningful life look like for you? That's a much harder exercise for some people than just continuing to put your head down and work and save and invest, and then wake up one day and realize you have more than enough to accomplish all of your goals. So do the real hard work, which is get clear on what a meaningful life looks like for you. And then number 3, put your portfolio in proper perspective. We don't live and work and earn and invest just to grow this portfolio for the sake of growing a portfolio. Now we get caught in that mindset, and I would argue that most people, that's the way they view it. But until we can take our mindset and shift it from our portfolio being the thing to our portfolio supporting the thing, which is your ideal lifestyle, we're not gonna put our portfolio in proper perspective. But doing so is essential if you wanna truly have enough, and not just have it, but also feel that sense of enough. Now, if this concept makes sense, you're saying, James, that makes perfect sense, but how do I actually get more clear on calculating the number of how much do I need for my retirement needs and my retirement lifestyle? I did a video on just that. So be sure to check out this video here to see the 3 things you need to know to determine what enough looks like for you. Once again, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial. And if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Root Financial get the most out of life with their money, be sure to visit us at www.rootfinancialpartners.com.